Get it going.
Adios.
There we go.
Okay. Is it for me?
Cool. Good stuff. All right. I think we've got a few people joining in. Might be a few others that jump in as we go. But appreciate everybody for joining the conversation this evening. We are recording this for those that are unable to make it. We'll be sure to share that with everyone else in the network, so they can take advantage of the information and the resources that we share this evening as well. So, my name is Justin Goonan. I'm the owner and head coach for Universal Sports Strength Conditioning, and super excited, super grateful to be working with Silverbacks, and huge thanks to lead coach Joe Rasmus for inviting us in for this conversation, and for hopefully some more stuff moving forward. So Joe, I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. So we know a lot of people are going into preseason here pretty shortly, and into our camps after an extended period of being off. And we always get the question, what should I be doing to prepare for camp? What should I be doing to transition into preseason? And Justin has a wealth of knowledge. I think working with junior national teams, pro sides, all the way down to the college level, in the strength and conditioning space, specifically focused on rugby athletes. So we're really excited to have him and Universal Sports Strength and Conditioning, giving some pointers and hopefully helping athletes start the season on the right foot, and also making sure that we're doing the right things to prevent injuries as we move into the season as well. So I think Justin's going to run through a couple of scenarios, whether you're coming out of a 7 season off a kind of a hypertrophy strength and conditioning program, or if you're in kind of a snap mode, it's been a long quarantine and I need to get back in shape in time for what we're doing this fall. So I'll let Justin take it away. I hope I promoted and introed it well.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, so like Joe said, just we'll cover those key scenarios, and then also just want to do a quick overview of what we refer to as our 4 pillars of performance, what they are, what they consist of, and the role that they play in the athletes as well. So yeah, just diving straight into it, and I guess sorry if I stop myself there. Joe mentioned my experience with a lot of the age grade and national teams, and that's where a lot of my resources really come from, or was identifying and finding the gaps that were not filled for athletes that were at least aspiring to or competing at that level. It seemed that a lot of athletes were kind of left to their own accord to figure out a lot of this stuff on their own. And while more and more high schools these days, or high school programs, have some sort of strength and conditioning program or coach, very few actually understand the demands and the training loads that are expected, or that athletes are exposed to at that next level. And so things like the 4 pillars and what we call our 12 high performance habits are meant to help the athlete understand and maintain or take control of their own environment, regardless of what sport it is, and regardless of what season they're in. So we'll dive into that a little bit more. But as Joe said, we are kind of hitting the heavy camp season right now. Maybe there's a few others coming up, especially the Silverbacks camps coming up in a few weeks. And one of the questions that we do get a lot is, how do I prep for the camp? And the short real answer is you can't. The best you can do is just train efficiently, train effectively. And what we always kind of recommend is make sure that you have your wellness intact, right? Make sure that you have that you have your recovery, your hydration, and your sleep on point, right? And that those three actually make up our first pillar of wellness, right? So our recovery, our hydration, and our sleep, those are things that we can easily control. In terms of, going into camp, it's making sure that you have a good solid hydration habit and hydration routine. That doesn't mean that you have to drink 2 gallons of water every day, but make sure that you're building the habit, building the routine of keeping water with you on a regular basis, right? That you're kind of managing and monitoring not just how much you're drinking, but how your hydration levels are. Right, and there's a lot of ways to measure that. A few simple ones. Probably the most most well known is being able to observe your urine color. Right, if it gets too yellow or too dark, that's extreme signs of dehydration. So making sure that you're at least aware of that. And then making sure that you are drinking regularly. I know a lot of camps, a lot of clinics that I've been involved in schedule 15-minute breaks. Some even have the athletes carry the water with them from station to station just to make sure it's there. And even if it is just a quick swig, they're maintaining that habit and at least having access to it. With regards to sleep, and I was actually talking about this earlier today with a coach. Uh, Summertime, when there's no school, it's easy to get out of our sleep routine, right? Athletes might have the tendency to stay up until wee hours of the morning playing video games or swiping through social media, something like that. We get out of that normal routine of falling to bed at a usual time, waking up at a usual time. But if you're going into camp, right, you're going to be exposed to a lot more activity, a lot more training than what you are, even if you're working out right now. And so, one of the easy things that you can do is start developing a pre-bed routine. Right, a lot of people scratch their head over that. What does that look like? Well, uh, a lot of athletes have a pre-game routine. Right, they eat this snack at this time, they tie their shoes at this time, they listen to this song at this time, right? And that's all to get their mind prepared for their performance. Well, we can do the same thing for our recovery and for our sleep, right? So let's say, for example, if you want bedtime to be 9:30, right? At 8:30, you switch off the TV and you go do the dishes. Or I'm sure moms and dads will appreciate hearing that one. Or when you switch off the TV, you go and you fold your laundry, or you pull your clothes out for the next day. And then after you pull your clothes out, you go and you brush your teeth, and then you go and take a shower. And it seems simple, it seems ridiculous, but each of those acts, especially once you build up that routine over time, it's actually triggering to your mind the same way that one song kind of flips your adrenaline, right? Get you pumped for the game. Something as simple as brushing your teeth, taking a shower, folding clothes can actually start to trigger our minds to prepare to sleep better, right? And so developing that pre-bed routine, maybe it's writing in your journal or something like that. That can help whenever you're traveling for camp, right? You're going to a new environment, which is going to throw your psyche off a little bit already, but if you have that pre-bed routine, right, you can always take a shower, you can always brush your teeth, write in your journal, read a book, something like that, which is going to help your mind prepare for better sleep. Okay, so that's one thing that you can do to prepare for the camps that are coming up. And then lastly is getting your recovery down, right? And recovery can consist of a lot of different things, right? Recovery can be stretching on a regular basis, right? It could be 10 to 15 minutes of stretching post workout, or a lot of times some people find that stretching before you go to bed is a good time and a good routine. Um, in addition to stretching, right, taking cool or cold showers. Recovery can also consist of what you eat, right? So your nutrition and having your nutrition on point can work towards your recovery or better recovery. And then also, things like compression gear. Um, we probably, a lot of us are probably familiar with compression tights or compression clothing, that helps increase blood flow, reduce swelling, those types of things. And even, probably the most overlooked and underused recovery tool is just breathing, right? A lot of us don't really know how to breathe properly, especially when it pertains to recovery, right? Slowing down our bodies, slowing down our systems and our heart rate. Even just taking some nice slow breaths, right? And being conscious of our inhales and our exhales, that can help slow our heart rate down. And a slower heart rate puts us into what a lot of folks refer to a rest and digest kind of flow, right? Whereas a lot of us have probably heard of the fight or flight, which is when our adrenaline is going to be up, our heart rate is raised, and breathing fast and breathing intensely can actually put us into that state. Breathing slow and controlled can actually do the opposite, right? And that's something that can really play a major role in our recovery. So that's something that I work with athletes a lot, especially in camps and in competitions, in current conditions as well, with a little bit warmer temperatures. Controlling our breath is something that we can do regardless of where we're at, and you'd be surprised at how much of a difference it makes in clearing your mind, clearing your thoughts. And of course, the lower our heart rate is, the easier it is for our bodies to recover. So that's just again, just a recap in terms of prep for camp, right? It's making sure that our wellness is on track, right? And making sure that we're fully aware of our hydration, our recovery, and our sleep. Okay. Moving on to periodization, right? A lot of probably the three most common goals that we as strength coaches hear is: I want to get bigger, I want to get stronger, and I want to get faster. The best explanation that I can give is that we're not usually able to do all that at the same time. All right. You can kind of touch on each of those categories a little bit as you go along, but as my grandfather always said, it's pretty hard to ride two horses at the same time. And in terms of pursuing your physical development goals, it's pretty hard to get bigger and stronger at the same time. Now, the reason is that the stress that each of those goals would put on your body just kind of surmounts or doubles as you try and pursue too many at the same time. All right. What that could lead to is overtraining, overreaching, right? Overtraining, which is a little bit more long-term kind of effect, right? Overreaching, which is more of a short-term, like maybe within a day or two or a week of a negative effect. Or worst case scenario, right? Overtraining could lead to an injury, right? If we're doing too much in terms of getting bigger, trying to get stronger, or trying to get faster, if we do too much without enough recovery in between, that can expose us and make us vulnerable to injuries, which is the last thing that any of us want, right? And for me, my goal as a strength coach is, yes, I want to help you get bigger, stronger, and faster. But more importantly, I want to make sure that you're available to play. All right. As I always tell the coaches, hey, if a player's on the injured reserve list, they're no good to themselves. They're no good to the team. They can't get better as an athlete. So my job, more importantly, is to make sure that they're available to be on the field and play, regardless of what sport it is. And that sometimes that means that, hey, we're going to have to tap the brakes a little bit, right, towards that goal. Maybe we're not able to gain an extra 5 pounds on this lift this week. That's okay, because you're going to be able to play and perform for the full duration of the season. You want to chase that extra 5 pounds this week? Hey, you're more than welcome to it, but just know the risk that you're taking that could cause you to miss a game because you're injured, because you're still hurt or something like that. And so that's one of the things that we always look at when it comes to periodization. Uh, if you are, trying to pursue any one of those goals, uh, as a strength coach, we often try to schedule. Most coaches, myself included, will try to program 3, maybe 4 weeks at a minimum towards any one of those goals. All right. It usually takes 3 to 4 weeks to really start to see or feel the benefits of that program. And so it's one of those things that you have to be patient with it, right? You have to be consistent with it. You have to be committed to it. Yeah, a lot of athletes go into a workout, and after the first one, they say, "Hey, I don't feel anything. It didn't help me get X or Y. I'm done. I'm going back to whatever I did." The reality of it is, if you really want to see the true effects and the true benefits of the program, you've got to stay consistent with it, and you've got to be committed to it for the full duration. So how we typically look at it, right? If we look at the summertime, of course, I work with a lot of high school and college athletes right now who, June, July, and August is their off time, and so, excuse me, a lot of times we'll try and focus on one of those goals per month. All right. So month one, maybe we focus on hypertrophy and growth. What that means is we're probably going to experience or program a lot more volume in the workouts, right? And volume could be measured in a lot of different ways. Most of the time, it's going to be measured in total weight moved, right? Or number of reps. Okay. Another thing that once we kind of move into month two, we're getting, focusing on strength, right? We might be doing fewer reps, but a little bit heavier weight. A lot of folks, I talk to a lot of athletes that are doing, they're doing 4 reps of 10, 5 reps, 3 reps of 12, so forth and so on. That's great for building a base, but if you really want to see a growth or gains in your actual strength, as some coach says, hey, if you want to get stronger, you got to put more weight on the bar. So if you are, if you are in a weight training routine, right, using lower rep ranges, say within 3 to 6, that's going to allow you to be kind of using higher percentages, higher loads, where you're really kind of targeting that max strength goal. And then lastly, in terms of getting faster, right? As just like with getting stronger, you got to put more weight on the bar. If you want to get fast, you got to move fast. And I actually made a post about this the other day, or actually, sorry, sent an email to our email list that a lot of athletes confuse speed training with conditioning. All right, and I just a little bit of a numbers nerd, so forgive me if some of this gets a little confusing. But if, let's say, if we're doing speed training and we're working on sprinting, if our speed decreases by more than 10%, or let's say if we're doing a 40-yard dash and our time increases more than 10%, right? We're no longer working on speed. We've now switched. If you think about our cars, right? Sometimes a lot of vehicles, you can switch from sport mode to eco mode, right? Eco mode is going to be a bit more fuel economy, better gas mileage, those types of things, right? So when we're sprinting or when we're running, when our speed decreases or when our time increases more than 10%, it's like we're switching energy sources a little bit. Okay, so then it's going to become more of a conditioning session versus a speed session. And that's one of the key mistakes that I see athletes make a lot, is they go out and they run until they're tired, until they feel like they can't run anymore, which, hey, don't get me wrong, has its benefits. And as a coach, we always appreciate the effort and the dedication. But if that's what we're doing, but getting faster is what the goal is, then we're not really, those two aren't really lining up. What we say we want to do versus what we're doing isn't collaborating. So Very important to make sure that our goal matches up with our program and with what it is that we're actually doing. So again, right, just to recap, periodization. All right, make sure that you understand what your goal is. Make sure that you have a clear understanding of how you're going to get there, and that you have an efficient and effective pathway to do that. And that's one of the things that we always help our athletes with, is identifying what the goal is, and more importantly, how it fits within their schedule. That's something that's also very difficult to achieve. So many athletes these days go from one sport to the next, right? You get 1 week off and then you're into the next season, or you're into the next competition phase. And there's still ways that you can see improvements with your training, with your strength work. But again, you have to be very specific and very strategic about fitting it in to make sure that you're not overreaching and kind of exposing yourselves to too much stress. So lastly, getting into the snap situation. And again, with a lot of the college athletes we work with, they're getting ready to come back into their preseason for the fall rugby competition. They're probably starting to get some fitness tests, or get word that, hey, coach has a fitness test lined up day one. Oh shoot, I've got to get my stuff together and make sure that I'm not the only one, or the first one that pukes on the day, or the first one that falls out. The thing that we always suggest and always urge in these situations is, don't do it all at once. Okay. A good sports psychologist mentor of mine says, it reminds me, how do you eat elephant? Right? One bite at a time. And so you've got to approach your season conditioning the same way. Even if you have been, kind of couch surfing all summer, right? You can't get game fit or match fit in 1 week. Okay. So I think we made a comment about this very recently, but first thing we always recommend is get a baseline, right? Whether it's a 1 mile test, 2 mile test. A lot of rugby programs use the Bronco shuttle test, which is very easy to do. Get a baseline of where you're at. All right. And then make sure, just like with the strength periodization, right? Set a plan. All right. I've got 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 weeks until preseason starts. And as you set up that plan, right, I would say start at maybe 50% of what you're going to be doing in camp. Right. So if you know that, coach is going to be doing your fitness test day one, and you're going to be, let's say practicing for 2 hours, and you're going to cover, I don't know, let's say 6,000 kilometers, right? Or 3 miles in your first training session. Well, maybe start week 1 at doing 1.5 miles. Right. And I know that sounds simple. You're probably thinking, well, in 1.5 miles and I've got to get ready for 3 miles. That's way too easy. But if you run that 1.5 miles at a faster speed than what you would run that 3 miles, right, that's going to give you some improvement right there. And then each week, as you increase that distance, right? So let's say you go from 1.5 miles to 1.7 miles to week 2, right? Week 3, you go to 2 miles, and so forth and so on. One, and most importantly, we said earlier, it's going to keep you from overtraining, from overreaching. All right. Too many athletes try and do too much in too little time. They end up injured, and then they end up with a big setback. All right. So don't go out and try and run 6 days a week or 5 days a week in an effort to get in shape. All right. Start with 3 days a week, start with 2 days a week, if that's all your schedule allows. But make sure that you have that plan in place, right? That you have that strategy in place, that you're working in a progressive overload, right? You're incrementally increasing the load and the distance. And even if it is a shorter distance than what you need to cover, make sure that you're covering that faster than what you will on test day. All right. Good example of that. And again, I'll be happy to follow up with anyone that has any questions about this more specifically. But with the Bronco test, right? We get what we refer to as the average maximal aerobic speed, or average aerobic speed. So it basically just says how many yards or how many meters you cover per second. All right. What we do is then we take that time and we multiply it. We add 10%. All right. So had an athlete submit a score just recently, and they ran their average speed for the Bronco test was I think it was 3.2 meters per second. So for them, what we do with their conditioning program moving forward, or at least for the next phase, is we have them run at 3.5 to 3.6 meters per second, right? So slightly above their normal speed. And what that does is that's kind of training the body, just like when you add weight to the bar, right? We're training the body to move a little bit faster. And then as we add distance, your body just kind of adapts to that new speed. All right. So again, that's a simple way to make sure that we're preparing for camp, even if it is a kind of a wake up moment. We haven't done anything up until now. It's a good, safer way, a progressive way to make sure that we're at least going to be in better shape in 4 to 6 weeks than where we are today, right? Even if we've not done anything up until now. The great thing about that as well, and this is what a lot of folks have trouble realizing or understanding until they try it, is that you can have shorter conditioning sessions than what a lot of your teammates might have. All right, I see a lot of athletes that go out and their conditioning sessions last 45 minutes to 60 minutes, right? But by calculating your times and your speeds, you can do that same conditioning, right, in half the time and get just as much, if not more, benefit out of it. All right, so it's about being time efficient and energy efficient as you're doing your final prep for camp. All right, so that kind of covers the big three. The last thing that I wanted to touch on, I kind of gave a little sneak peek to it earlier, talking about our prep for camp, right, is what we refer to as our 4 pillars of performance. So we mentioned earlier that wellness is the first pillar. Okay, that consists of our sleep, our hydration, our recovery. The other 3 pillars, again, these are all things that are within the athlete's control. Okay, these are things that has nothing to do with your talent, with your size, with your position, or with what facilities you have access to. All right, so these are things that any athlete can control in their own personal environment. Pillar number 2 refers to our nutrition. Pillar number 3 refers to or focuses on our physical readiness. All right, and I'll go into these a little bit more. And then pillar number 4 focuses on the mental game, right? Our mindfulness, our mindset, our thought process, not just in terms of goal setting, right? But how we approach challenges, how we overcome mistakes or errors, losses, or anything else that may kind of get in the way, or we might experience along our journey. All right. So going back to pillar 2, and again, these pillars are kind of the bigger bigger umbrellas or larger categories that are focused on or broken down into our 12 habits of high performance. Okay, so for our nutrition, we actually break those down into 4 smaller habits, which are our meals, okay, our snacks, our snack time, our pre-training nutrition, and our post-training nutrition. Okay, so meals, snacks, pre-training, and post-training. And while our approach to each of those might be very similar, our execution for each of those might be slightly different. And they're going to vary based on what kind of training day are we having? What do we have coming up? What kind of training are we coming out of? Do we have any travel going on? Anything like that. Pillar number 3 with our physical readiness. Okay, that encompasses our mobility. All right, how well we can move, you know, simple example of that is how deep can you squat without assistance, right? What kind of mobility, what kind of fluid range of motion do you have in your hips, knees, ankles, back, shoulders, neck, etc. Then our activation, okay, which is kind of prepping or getting our muscles fired up and awakened, as some people say, for the exercise or for the training we're about to do. Then it's our physical training, strength training. Okay, a lot of folks are familiar with weight training, but I'm always careful because not everyone has access to weights, right? Not everyone is comfortable with weights, or free weights or anything like that. There's a number of athletes I've worked with who, you know, especially during the pandemic, you don't have access to anything. So maybe you only have body weight or household items that you can use. So you have to kind of get a little bit creative with it. And then the final piece of that is our speed and condition, or speed and running, or conditioning. Okay, and you know, a lot of people think that conditioning is just going out running shuttles or up downs or something like that. But if you think about it, right, conditioning takes a whole lot of different forms. A lot of athletes, their conditioning programs look differently. Think about it, right? Offensive linemen don't need to or shouldn't condition the same way that a wide receiver does, right? They don't run the same distance. They don't move the same way. And so maybe something like a wrestling match, right? Wrestling for 30 seconds and then wrestling for 30 seconds and then resting for a minute and doing that over a period of 10 minutes. That could be a conditioning session, right? It doesn't have to be running specific. Okay. And then lastly, we talked about the fourth pillar, which is our mental game, our mindset, right? Not just goal setting, but how we approach certain things. One of the easiest examples of that is when it comes to weight training, right? It's not about how much weight is on the bar. It's how well are we moving it? It's how fast are we moving it? We actually, I've got it right here. This little device right here, for me as a coach, has been a major gift, a major blessing. If you're familiar with accelerometers, this little device right here can actually tell me how fast the athlete is moving the bar. Okay, and without going into too much detail, we can program it to where at certain times of the year of the program, we want them to move at a certain speed. Well, as the athlete starts to get more weight on the bar, this little device can tell us that they're moving it slower than what they should be. So it allows us to have the conversation of, okay, hey, let's take weight off of the bar, right? Lighter weight, but we're moving it faster. So we're still working towards our goal, right? That in itself is something that mentally a lot of athletes kind of struggle with, right? And it's just being open to that mindset of, hey, it's not about the work I do in the weight room. It's about what it's going to help me do on the field, right? So that's just kind of a simple example of how we kind of work mindset and the mental game into our programming and help the athletes kind of advance and progress in that way. So so that was it for our big kind of talking points. If anyone has any questions, you're more than welcome to throw it into the chat, or throw it into the chat. Joe, I'll turn it over to you right now, or if they want to unmute and they can share their question with the group.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got a pretty small group, so if anyone wants to just unmute and ask a question, I got one, Justin, that maybe we'll get the juices flowing. So you mentioned breathing habits as a way to recover, especially in the moment. So is there any exercise or activity that these athletes can try now and then have on hand when they get to camp, when they get into that moment of physical or mental overwhelmed, just as a reset? Are there any activities you'd recommend or breathing techniques?
Yeah. So a couple of different approaches to it. The first one that comes to mind is what a lot of folks refer to as box breathing. Okay, if you think about four sides of a box, right? So on one side of the box you have inhale, right, and then you have a pause, and then you have an exhale, and then you have another pause. All right. And of course, a square is going to be equal sides. So each of those movements, right? Inhale, pause, exhale, pause, is equal time. The one that we always kind of start out with is just using a simple 4 count. Okay, so you can try this one on your own, but basically all you do is you just inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, pause 2, 3, 4, exhale 2, 3, 4, and pause 2, 3, 4. All right. And of course, I mean, as you get better with that, you can reduce the time, you can increase the time. I wouldn't increase it too much until you're comfortable. But and then another one is I believe it's a 4. What is it? I believe it's a 6-4-7 or 7-4-8. 6-4-7. All right. So it's inhale for 6 counts, hold for 4 counts, and then exhale for 7 counts. Anything to where you're just becoming conscious of your rate of breathing and slowing it down. One, it helps you absorb more oxygen versus trying to, rapidly breathe. And like we said, at the same time, it's just going to allow your body to slow down, to slow your heart rate, which puts you into a more restful and recovered state.
Anyone else has questions? Anyone else want to just unmute? Kathleen, I see you remind me of your son's name?
Yes, I'm not sure if I'm just sounding like a typical parent, but spending most of my time with junior high kids and knowing my own son, I guess my biggest question is this something that they will it'll be part of their routine when they go to camp? Because I can say what I would recommend them to do at home, and it goes in one ear and out the other, hoping that it comes from other adults, that it will be reiterated so he understands, we're not completely nuts in what we're suggesting to them, but especially talking about the mindset and the, nutrition and the physical aspect of it too. Is it just part of the schedule at camp that he will then understand how to do it? I guess my thought listening to all of this has been, these sound like wonderful aspects for elite athletes, and I hadn't thought of my almost 13-year-old as an elite athlete yet.
What the heck?
Oh, sorry.
So should I take a lead on this one, Justin?
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
So within the camp structure, there's going to be periodization of their activities. Everything's going to be heavily planned out. There's not perhaps going to be so much deliberate communication of we're periodizing this for this specific reason throughout the camp. So they'll get a feel for it and how it works in practice. But when it comes to the strength and conditioning preparation, there is a high emphasis on kind of self-accountability and work ethic with the athletes when they get out of the program. And I'll turn it over to Justin because he does a lot of this remote coaching already. And it can be very valuable, but it's to the extent that the athletes are going to buy in themselves and put in this work on their own. Because, on the one hand, as a coach, I don't want to spend, if I have 30 minutes with them, I don't want to spend 5 minutes of my session explaining stuff. I want to give a 30-second explanation and get them active. So yeah, I'll turn that over to Justin.
Yeah, there's definitely opportunities to to kind of include or re-emphasize some of these things, some of these principles in camp. But at the same time, one of the biggest objectives of camp, besides learning something new, is to have fun and to enjoy it. And so you're exactly right. A lot of these habits, a lot of these principles do stem from elite high performance environments. which, I certainly wouldn't, I certainly wouldn't place heavily on a young adolescent athlete, but at the same time, the earlier that they get exposed to it, right, especially if reaching an elite level of athleticism or competition is their goal, the earlier that they're acquainted, aware, and familiar with these types of principles, the easier it is to adapt and to maybe they don't cover all 12 habits right now, right? Maybe for this year or for this 6 months, it's, hey, let's work on a good sleep routine, right? And not that I would expect a 10, 11, 12-year-old to have a goal journal that they're writing down daily, but even as about to be a parent myself, so one of the things I'm thinking about is, well, obviously I don't want to try and explain all the theory and everything to a young child, but getting them in the habit of brushing their teeth and putting their clothes away or something like that is a way to kind of help kind of work into that routine. So and then how that carries over into camp, right, is maybe having conversations with them and say, hey, when you get to camp, maybe not all campers, some campers are going to have their phones and they're going to be texting and swiping and playing games or whatever, but helping them understand that, hey, the longer you're on your phone, the more it's going to keep your mind and your body awake, the harder it is to fall asleep. And if what they really want to do at camp is to play rugby and get better at this skill, then they need to make sure they get good sleep or good nutrition, stay hydrated, those types of things, and helping more so just so they have the basic understanding of how all that kind of affects their environment.
I think biggest takeaway, parents on the call, is make your kids do chores right before bed. It's good for their rugby performance. Any other questions? Okay, well, so really excited kind of at the tail end of this to announce that Silverbacks is going to be partnering with Universal Sports Strength and Conditioning. So Justin is going to be doing strength and conditioning programming for us. For athletes in our program, we will have general programs ranging from beginner through intermediate and advanced, trying to help athletes both who have access to weight rooms and who are more into the body weight stuff. So Justin is going to be doing a lot of that programming on the group level. Also, his company for those athletes who are really trying to figure out how to periodize for multiple sports, who have very specific goals that aren't covered within our general programs, as an add-on service, is going to be doing virtual coaching for both strength and conditioning and for nutrition. So Justin's going to be a really great resource for us. His Universal Sports Strength also coaches for position-specific training, and we're really excited to have his company on board as part of what we offer at Silverbacks. So if you are curious about what those individual add-on strength and conditioning services look like, I believe Justin has has dropped his email in the chat here, and I hope I've explained everything well of how we're going to be working together. But a really great resource in terms of everything you need to know about getting ready to be on the rugby field and getting ready to perform.
Yeah, no, thanks, Joe. We're super excited to be working with Silverbacks as well. That's one of the things that one of the main goals, main objectives that we've kind of set out to do is help those athletes that do want to achieve the elite and high performance levels, that they have the tools, the habits, and the resources necessary to get there. We've seen a number of athletes that get there, they kind of get shell shocked, realize that it's a lot more than what they expected. And we want to be able to kind of give them the tools, the knowledge, and the resources ahead of time, so they're best prepared for that. As Joe said, I did drop my email in the chat. if you want to grab that before we go, feel free to send me an email at any time with any questions. Be more than happy to schedule a follow-up call with anyone individually if you cared to. I also dropped a flyer in there. August 7th, I'm very, very fortunate to be working with a mentor and a colleague of mine, Ed Costner, who is a world-renowned strength coach in his own right, has coached international champions, All Blacks, World Cup champions, as well as professional athletes in other sports and other levels. He's coming to Bloomington, Indiana to do a athlete performance clinic along with myself. And so if you can make it to Bloomington, you're more than welcome. If not, we are going to be having remote access registration. So those folks can receive video recordings of the presentations as well as copies of the presentations themselves. So you can have those resources and hear the same knowledge and same information that everyone here in Bloomington is going to get as well.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for your time tonight. I hope you guys found it informational.